Hello there, YouTube. Since I've done some format changes, I ended up deleting some old videos, and a few people were asking me about, I guess it's my most popular video, which means 5 people watched it instead of 3 people watched it, but the video I did on firearms, and also got a few people wondering what was off onto the side on a couple of my other videos, so I thought I would talk about my Civil War muskets. Here's the other one. I own 2 of them. I own a pattern 1842 smoothbore Springfield. I don't know if you can really see that, but there's no rifling there. And this one's actually kind of scuzzed up as an event a couple weeks ago. I've already cleaned the barrel, but the lock is a little dirty, but I left it dirty for a reason, partly for this video. The other weapon, since I'm talking about it, well, maybe you can see it better if I stand like this, is 1853 Enfield, and this one, technically the original caliber was .577, although I think all the reproductions are in a truer .58. Since as far as reproductions go, the most common one is going to be the .58 caliber, your Springfields, and then your Enfields. Going back to this one, the thing about this one, mine is an Army Sport replica, and it's actually a newer one. You probably can't see it, it's too bright. Maybe you can see it. Doesn't look like it'll show up, but I have noticed with the newer ones, they love rust. I brought this one brand new to the 150th of Shiloh, and at the pre-event tactical called Fallen Timbers, I could literally see, because it was raining and misting all morning, I could literally see beads of water, rusty water, rolling down my barrel. I'm like, oh fuck, that's just how this weekend's gonna go. And I probably could have coated it better with oil, but I actually took the train ride there, so it was getting handled a lot. I didn't really have a chance to clean it and re-oil it. I figured, you know, it'll be fine, because it was bright and shiny when I got it, and it was still bright and shiny up until that first event. But I made sure to get my picture taken while it was still nice and shiny. I bought this one as my first musket with the bayonet, and the musket itself cost me around $1,000. This is not a cheap one, but I feel it was well worth it. The fact that it has a smooth bore versus the rifling makes it a lot easier to clean. I don't have to worry about just little pieces of fouling getting caught in that rifling and not getting picked up by a patch. It stays clean a lot longer. Because it's a 69, I've found that, because you got to keep in mind, a 58 versus the 69, you're talking about like a 20 to 30% increase in overall internal dimensions in the chamber, about 30% or so. So you tend to have to use a lot more powder, especially if it's a damp morning. I know they don't like that, but you'll have to double charge it. Historically, from what I understand, is a traditional load, whether it's the buck and ball, which is once, actually I have some, the traditional load, which is either the buck and ball or a round ball. And for comparison, we have 3 here. This big one is your 69 caliber. This smaller one in the middle, that's the 58, and this is a 44. Now slightly smaller than that, at about 30 to 32 is your caliber of buckshot, and there could be anywhere from, I don't know, 3 I've heard is and read is the typical. But I've also seen period packaging that lists it as being 5, and I've seen in museums where they have different cartridges on display, buck and ball, and it had as many as 8 pieces in it. And it was wrapped as a very light linen cartridge wrapped in string, so there was the distinctive ball at the bottom, and almost as taking up roughly the same amount as one of these 69 balls would be 8 pieces of buckshot, so anywhere from 3 to 8. And as the smooth bore, it's made to shoot either buckshot, solid, or the combination buck and ball, which was actually favored for certain situations. I know it was often issued to what's the word I'm looking for? Convoy guards. I guess because they figured they'd be outnumbered and more projectiles would be more helpful, but also guards at prisons were issued buck and ball a lot more often. That could just be because buckshot wasn't as common, so it or wasn't as widely produced. Reason I got this one is because the unit I portray, which is the 1st Nebraska, from historical documentation that we have available, we know that they carried this particular weapon, and since I do most of my reenacting is what's considered the Trans-Mississippi theater, most of the time it's in Missouri, sometimes Arkansas, Tennessee. I do a few stuff in Nebraska, Minnesota, and the Dakotas, but most of that's living history or a garrison encampment at some of the forts in the area, which is a little bit different. It isn't an actual battle most of the time. It's just kind of a living history and talking to the spectators and the visitors to the site. Usually it's on a state park or state recreation area where most of these forts are. But we found that the 69 was issued to our unit, and being in the Trans-Mississippi, it is actually a more common caliber than the 58 Springfield, because the 1855, 61, and 63 Springfield were the most common weapon of the war. They were produced in the highest amount of numbers, and actually second to that in terms of volume is going to be this guy here. These were imported quite a bit by both sides. Initially, the Confederacy kind of had corner on the market, as it were. They had sent people over to England faster than the federal government could. In this one, since I've got it here, maybe you can see this, maybe you can't. Fucking speaker. Anyway, it's got a Tower of London Armory stamp on it. Yeah, London Armory Company. Reads right in the side. So this one's a fairly accurate reproduction. This one is Euro Arms, not Army Sport. I feel they're both very reliable. I don't use this one as much. I actually let my father use this one quite a bit more, and he feels it's very reliable, and he's never complained about any sort of problems. Aesthetically, I like it. The brass polishes up very nicely. It's kind of ugly at this point because I still haven't put the full polish, but also the bluing of the steel keeps rust down to a minimum compared to this guy. This is a lot more work that I have to put into this, but I do like it for parades because I can shine it up and it looks pretty smart. But I also found that a lot of people use the Springfield, usually a 61 or sometimes a 63 Springfield, and that's not always correct. There was a huge variety of firearms, and even though 61 was the most common, or just the Springfield in general, whether it's the 55, the 61, or the 63. It wasn't used everywhere, and it wasn't used all the time. And the interesting thing about this is, if you notice this nose cap, it's very similar to the Harper's Ferry flintlock rifles, and if I'm saying it correctly, the Charlottesville American copy of the French musket of Revolutionary War era. It's actually basically a copy of that. And the interesting thing about the 42 is they standardized parts because the Industrial Revolution, because they had factories that could mass produce the parts. But your big difference is going to be this lock. Instead, we have the cap lock versus the flint lock. But if you're going to an event and you want to be more accurate, especially in the Trans-Mississippi, where they're kind of, by both sides, could treat it as being a sideshow. They're not getting the same quality of weapons. If they were lucky in the Trans-Miss, they're getting these. Both sides love getting these. Both sides loved having the Enfield. This one, I don't know if that's true to the originals. This one's actually heavier than this one. And I think it's because of all that brass. This butt plate is actually quite thick. It's just a big solid chunk of brass. This is also all solid brass, and then this nose piece too. It's a not just as a replica, but as an actual historical firearm. This would have been more common in the Trans-Mississippi. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the Springfield. I'm not saying, oh, your Springfield's incorrect, oh, it's wrong. But for the area I reenact and the type of events I go to, having something that is considered third rate or second rate, or, well, we don't have Springfields, but we have these British import rifles. We're importing these for roughly the same cost as the Springfield. There's economic fluctuation and all that shit, but if you're a math guy, you could probably follow that, and the price would have gone up and down depending on how many you can ship in, and Confederate privateers seizing ships could also drive up the supply, or drive down the supply, or drive it up if you're in the Confederacy, or vice versa, where you have the same Confederate privateers bringing it in, and either getting captured or sunk by the federal government. Of course, they captured them, they'd use them. They were already making, I think it's, I want to say like 1.5 million Springfield variants, if I'm not mistaken. So having an imported gun that doesn't require the labor, but it's still at the same cost, that means more troops plus the weapon that is compatible. Parts-wise, it's not compatible, but ammunition, it's compatible, and that's a big deal when you're talking black powder. This one could also do the buck and ball and the solid shot, but typically what this one would have fired would be a conical, and I don't have those. I have fired these through it, which accuracy is all right. When I did fire this guy, the 42, the smoothbore, I understand why it's called a pumpkin slinger, and I actually loaded it with 120 grains of powder because I wanted to see what the originals were like. I took 2 of my cartridges, which I knew were my blank cartridges, which I knew were loaded with 60 grains of powder, and loaded them up like I normally do, and stuck in the round ball. I didn't patch it because historically you're not supposed to patch a musket. You can use a paper wadding, or normally it was just round ball on top of the powder, and that should create enough of a seal. A patch can actually get it get it stuck. So when I shoot this, I don't patch it with the round ball. But yeah, that's some hell of a kick when you put in 120 grains of powder and the round ball. And I can imagine having a sore shoulder at the end of a battle if you survive that. But its accuracy, yeah, at 100 yards is pretty questionable. I would say 75 yards is your max. 100 yards if you have a company that's firing in volley, it's effective. But as far as accurate shots, because with this, maybe you can see, maybe you can't. It has no sight here. There's no sight. It just has the bead on the end like a shotgun, which if this was a more accurate reproduction, I know you can swap out some of the parts, but this should actually be made of brass. And the originals, right here in the stock, it was a little bit thinner. This one gets beat on the ground a lot, fucking pounding it in when I've got a damp morning and that first couple of cartridges won't go off. You want to pack it down. So probably having a thicker stock is nicer from a reenacting point of view. It makes it a little bit more stable. This one, as far as accuracy, I only shot it at about give or take 100 yards. I mean, I paced it out, but it's not like I had a laser rangefinder that's like, I know this is exactly 100 yards or 150 yards. So it's an estimation, and I'm shooting pieces of cardboard nailed to the side of a tree. So it's just paper targets. It's not like I'm actually doing genuine ballistic tests. But this is definitely a rifle, a shooter's gun, whereas this is, as far as like real performance goes, this is not the weapon of a marksman. This is a volley weapon. This is not something, I'm sure you could take it out black powder hunting, but if it's more than 50 feet away, good luck, because you're probably not going to hit it, especially with the noise and the smoke and the kick. You're not going to have time for a follow-up shot. But I think that's all I got today. Thanks for listening to me ramble. See you next time.